He's been shot at, shelled, even kidnapped in wars from Africa to the Falklands. But tonight, he is the story. At the moment, he's at a reception being given by the editor-in-chief of ITN, Stuart Purvis, to celebrate his return from Yugoslavia, his latest assignment.
I think no harm in saying and no shame in saying, first and foremost to you, Mike, congratulations. Cheers. Cheers. Michael.
Well, I suppose one good speech, two good speeches designed. And, oh my God.
I shouldn't bother to make that speech. I'm sorry to interrupt. It is a news flash. Don't die for cover. I'm here to say, Michael Nicholson, this is your life.
Michael, you scoundrel.
Not only me, scoundrel. There's a lot of them here.
Scoundrels all.
Right, back to our studios, and meanwhile, while we make that journey, we're going to present to our viewers a reminder of just one of your frontline reports. It's from Vietnam, the battle for Newport Bridge, January 1975.
So the mortar hit right in the middle of them down there on the right, 100 yards away. It's killed a lot of people. But now they've gone back to some of their positions. They've left one wounded in the road.
Well, here is the company that helped us spring our exclusive tonight, in particular your wife, Diana, and sons, Tom and William. Well, Michael Nicholson, this is your life, and it's a life that, as a war correspondent, has contained more than a measure of danger. Indeed, that's what you called your most recent book. In August 1978, you flew into Angola, torn by civil war after the withdrawal of the Portuguese from their former colony. Your mission, to get an interview with UNITA Forces leader, Dr. Jonas Savimbi. Here you are in what they call the land of the end of the earth. After 4 months surrounded by trigger-happy guerrilla troops in snake-infested swamp, you have to face the problem of getting out.
It was no time for me to be asking you for a piggyback.
ITN soundman Mike Doyle. Good to see you.
A long time.
I hope that's a tin of bully beef, is
It's
it?
a tin of corned beef, yeah.
Yes.
That's what we lived on, really. And when we came out, every November the 20th...
We tried to give each other a tin of corned
we
beef.
celebrated with tins of corned beef.
Washed down by something nice.
We charged for a great deal more, I must admit, on our expenses.
Well, Mike, bringing it down to less attractive things, you were brought down at the time by foot blisters that went septic.
They were awful, really, what with the dust and the rain and the flies and everything. And this surgeon here tried to operate with his Swiss Army knife, and he did quite a good job, actually, draining the blisters. But I still couldn't walk properly, so I had to be piggybacked through swamps and such like. And then the UNITA people who were looking after us fashioned a canoe and some oxen, and they dragged me, and I really didn't see much of that journey because of all the dust from the oxen's feet.
When we started this walk, it was 1,500 miles. Mickey was always at the back because he was the older one of the trio. But by the end of the march, he was always up front.
Right. And there are more details of this to follow. Thank you, Mike Doyle. Well, you reach the airstrip and count the days while an ITN colleague tries to hire a plane to fly the hazardous rescue mission.
And that's how I became an eccentric millionaire with his own private jet.
Former ITN reporter Anthony Carthew. Nancy, this is beginning to sound like a touch of the James Bond.
I filed a whole series of false flight plans saying I was going here and there. There was only me on the aircraft. When we picked them up, nobody else was on it. And everything worked perfectly until he said, and his mates, "What we miss most is beer, of course. Can you get some beer, Tony?" But suddenly, we're about to take off to South Africa. Here at the bottom of the steps is a deputation. "Can we have our bottles back, please?" I said, "Well, for God's sake, what do you want the bottles back?" "Glass is very short inside here." Off we took, headed due north in the direction of the flight plan I'd filed, got up in the air, turned around, zoom, straight down to Johannesburg.
Right. Thank you so far for that story, Anthony Carthew. And waiting for you at Johannesburg Airport was another ITN colleague. It was a welcome and a familiar face, and it's on that screen now. Sandy Gall.
Michael, when I was sent down to meet you in Johannesburg with Mickey Doyle and Tom Phillips after you came out of Angola, David Nicholas said to me, "Get them out at all costs." Luckily, it wasn't necessary. As you know, you came in late that night. I met you at the airport. I brought deliberately 2 bottles of Dom Perignon. I thought that after 3 months in Angola, you deserved the very best. Michael, I am sorry I can't be with you tonight, but I do hope you have a marvelous time. All the best.
Thank you, Sandy Gall. Now, someone else who had every intention of being here tonight is the pilot who braved marauding jet fighters to get to you. But when he tried to fly out of Mozambique, where a civil war is raging, his plane was riddled by ground fire. But he did get to a phone, and he's on the line now, Captain Roy Matthews.
Oh, Roy.
Michael, how are you? I'm very sorry not to be there to meet you again. But I'd like to say that the mission to pull you out of Angola was one of the most interesting in my career. The mission in 1978 to reach you looked very dicey at times, but we did manage in the end. And I'm very glad to have been part of your life, and very grateful that we succeeded in pulling you and your team out. I'd like to wish you all the best for the future, Michael, and maybe we will cross paths again somewhere.
Captain Roy Matthews in Chimoy. And thanks to his daring, there you are, reunited with Diana. Now, Michael Nicholson, this is your life. World War II was only a couple of years away when you were born on January the 9th, 1937. That's you at 5 months, and here with your mother, Doris. Your father, Alan, was a lieutenant colonel in the Royal Engineers and beachmaster at the Normandy landings. You go to school at Park Modern Secondary, leaving at 15 to get an editorial assistant's job on the Shoe and Leather News. A tanner a week, I imagine.
That's right.
Yes. A school pal is around when you find this car rusting in a garage, which is about to be pulled down.
It was a priceless Bugatti, and he bought it for a few quid.
And he helped you rebuild it. Robin O'Connor.
Oh, Robin. Very good lad, eh?
And we have a shot of the two of you with another passenger, I think, who's Michael's boxer, Butch. That's right. Was it a powerful machine, Robin?
Oh, the boxer, yes, absolutely. The car was too, of course. In fact, to keep it in petrol, he had to take a job in the city, driving for that city company, Big Daimler. And one night, I remember, he had to go to London Airport to pick up some VIPs. Unfortunately, we'd had a date at the same time with a couple of ladies. And to save time, he decided that he'd hide me in the boot. The VIPs never found out about it, but somebody else did, the guy in the car behind. We went over a bump, the boot lid flew open, and he saw my head pop out.
Thank you, Robin O'Connor. Your national service is in the RAF in 1955. After demob, you determined to go to university. To pay your way through A-levels, you work as a hospital porter. And Mike Doyle's feet are still grateful for what you learned there. Leicester University accepts you. You excel as an athlete. That's you in the hurdles, or rather over them. You're an award winner as editor of the student magazine and become president of the Debating Society. Well, we found a picture of you in front of a microphone in an unexpected role.
You don't get me, I'm part of the union. You don't get me, I'm part of the union. You don't get me, I'm part of the union. Till the day I die. Till the day I die.
He had a hit with that with the Straubs, the other half of your university folk club duo, David Cousins.
Fantastic. That's amazing.
Well, tell us more about the great folk singer.
Well, Michael always had the sort of twinkle of Broadway in his eyes as he sang every word of that Kingston Trio songbook. And do you remember the song we were actually singing?
Oh, you're not going to ask me to sing.
Do you remember this one? We were actually singing it in that photograph. Well, the fox went out on a chilly night, and he prayed for the moon to give him the light. 3 million miles to go that night before he reached the town. Town, oh, town, oh, he'd many miles to go that night before he reached the town. Oh.
Now, John Humphreys, you witnessed the musical Nicholson, didn't you, when you were rivals in South Africa?
Sorry to say I did. We used to go to an Italian restaurant. We thought most of us went for the food. He, of course, didn't go for the food. He went because the owner of the restaurant, you remember this, Nick, he was an Italian who fancied himself as a singer of great arias. So he and the cafe owner, when they'd had enough dreadful Rhodesian wine, would stand there and sing even worse. I tell you, the food wasn't very good. The music was terrible. Give us a bit of an aria.
No, you're very kind.
I withdraw that.
That was lovely.
He's a Welshman. He's bound to say that.
But you did have one fan, of course, art student Diana. Now, the future war correspondent bombards ITN with applications while working in public relations. You're accepted as a trainee in 1964. You covered the Torrey Canyon disaster when the tanker's cargo turned the Cornwall coastline into an oil slick. But your editor felt that he and the public were not realizing the full horror.
But I certainly experienced the full horror when you came back.
Former ITN chairman Sir David Nicholas. So, David, what happened when Michael got back?
Well, I'd felt that we'd done very well on the pictures, but we hadn't got across the gungy, sticky, smelly awfulness of the oil, the crude oil in the beaches. So we suggested, why doesn't he bring back a little carton of this stuff so that the newscaster could just hold it up and show how bad it was. So he came into my office and he said, "Hey, boss, I gather you wanted to know how bad it was," and he poured a bucketful on my desk. It took me about 3 months to get the office.
It was a large desk, Margaret.
Thank you very much, Sir David Nicholas. Well, after that, you probably felt it safer to go off to cover the civil war in Nigeria. Now, Rebel Colonel Adekunle had a warm welcome for you, I believe, a game of Russian roulette.
That's right, yeah.
What did you do?
Well, he was called the Black Scorpion, and the crew and I were sitting around a table arranging the next day's trip up country. And there was a bowl of flowers in the middle of the table. And all of a sudden, Adekunle leant forward and pulled a revolver out of the bowl of flowers and put it to my forehead. And then he pulled the trigger, and it went click. And I went very white. He said I was the whitest man he'd ever seen. And when it was all over, he said, "No, you will come with me tomorrow and we'll film my troops. But if you tell lies, if you misrepresent my army, I will kill you." And I said, "I've seen enough of tonight to know that I must behave myself, because next time the pistol could be loaded." But he said it was, and he leant down and he picked up the pistol and fired it again and blew a hole the size of my fist out of the ceiling.
Yes. Well, fortunately, your new bride, Diana, remained unaware of how short-lived your marriage might have been. You're there when Nigeria's civil war becomes Biafra's war of independence, but you have no visa and you're arrested.
And you were only released on the promise that you would stay at my mission and I would not let you film.
No, you've written he's a priest who reminded you of Spencer Tracy, missionary
right,
Father Kevin Doheny.
Dear old Kevin.
Father Kevin,
Isn't he a Tracy man?
Yes. When you were kissing him, you looked like Hepburn. It was wonderful. Father Kevin, did the young reporter keep his conditions of bail?
No way. He broke every rule. And on arrival, the three of you were arrested. So I arrived on the scene with this problem. Three of you being arrested. I tried to convince the Ministry of Information that you were a very excellent journalist, even though I'd never met you before.
You were always a great liar, Carl.
No, anyway, I said, you know, it's in the best interest of Biafra that you should film. I had this problem, and I took you back to Omahia and put you in a house, the mission house, a double-story house overlooking the town of Omahia. And then I locked you in there, the three of you, and went off to the feeding program. There are thousands of starving people around us, refugees, displaced people. And I went off to look after them when, shortly afterwards, there was an air raid sound. Right. And the jets were distantly heard coming towards us. And then, to my surprise and horror, I could hear a commentary, a detailed commentary on everything that was taking place down there in the town. Here I had a problem. These three people had taken a film and broken all the rules. But when I saw Mike, and I say this in all sincerity, when I saw the courage and the bravery with which you had taken this film, I said, the best thing I can do for you is to help you to smuggle this film back to London.
And you did.
Which you did.
Thank you, Father Kevin Doherty.
Lovely to see you.
Now let's see that film from the veranda of Father Kevin's mission.
Dropping incendiaries. People in the bush. Listen, here comes another one. This is their 7th run-in. The time is 1:45 on Saturday.
Next stop is Jordan and the hijack of 3 jets by revolutionaries, which ended like this. And those were world-exclusive pictures. Next, an invasion that took a Mediterranean island by surprise.
Cyprus, 1974, and the Turks about to invade the island.
Your cameramen there, and in many more war zones, Alan Downs and sound recordist Bob Hammond. Alan, you three were there.
Yes, we were. We arrived to see the aircraft coming out with paratroopers falling out of the sky. You were concerned that the paratroopers might think the gear was armaments, weapons, and
I have to explain, Mike, that
proceeded accordingly.
When these guys are dropping from the sky, there's Alan with a kind of bazooka on his shoulder, and there's Bob with a rifle, Mike, which could be any kind of machine gun.
Yeah.
And if you're dropping from the sky and see these, I suppose the first instinct would be to open fire.
And to stop them firing, you went over to introduce yourself, a moment that Alan captured.
That's right, he did. Always does.
The aircraft came in waves at 5-minute intervals with 60 paratroopers for each aircraft. Their dropping zone was less than 2 miles from the capital of Nicosia. My name is Nicholson. How do you do?
Very polite in the circumstances. Thanks very much, Alan Downs and Bob Hammond. In 1977, you take charge of ITN's South Africa Bureau in Johannesburg for 4 years. Going home, you decide to drive Diana, 9-year-old Tom, and 8-year-old William the 4,000 miles overland through Africa by Land Rover. Now, William, did he have any tips for survival?
Yes, he always used to say to me, always shake your sleeping bag, because you never know, there may be a snake within.
And Tom?
He told us that if a lion attacked, we were to put our arms down its throat and grab its tongue, and to always stand side on to an elephant. We know how to use it, but...
Well, I'll remember that. Thank you very much.
But I thought everyone knew that.
Back home, you write a book about the adventure across the Limpopo. And you were on a more gentle family holiday in the Lake District when the next call came, the Falklands. Unable to get film out, here's how you reported the landings at San Carlos.
This is how it sounded as I flung myself down on the deck.
Keep down, Charles, the clock date.
You also get an interview with a certain Sea King helicopter pilot when he hopped aboard your ship to phone his mother, Prince Andrew.
Can you tell me what was the worst part of the war for you?
The worst part of the war? For the first 10 minutes after Sheffield, I think, when one really didn't know which way to turn and what to do. I know where I was, and I was fairly frightened then.
Prince Andrew has sent you a letter tonight. I'll just quote a little from it. You and I have met in strange circumstances on more than one occasion, but the most remarkable was when I was a young sub-lieutenant in HMS Invincible. You have a very distinguished record as a war correspondent, and I congratulate you on your OBE. Perhaps life may now prove a little less hazardous in foreign affairs. Somehow, I doubt it. Signed, yours sincerely, Andrew.
Thank you.
For your Falklands coverage, you share the BAFTA Richard Dimbleby Award with the BBC's Brian Hanrahan. You come home to write novels and set up Channel 4 daily in Washington. And last year saw you in the Gulf with cameraman Eugene Campbell there. And more recently, in Yugoslavia, being shot at in a helicopter. And let me remind you of this evacuation by helicopter from the besieged American embassy in Saigon in 1975.
And if it wasn't for one single American Marine, whose name I didn't have the chance or time to discover, we would never have climbed our way to our evacuation. Our turn came just as it began to get dark, a little after 7:30. Evacuees from the besieged city on. And 30 minutes later, we landed safely on our carrier off the South Vietnamese coast. Michael Nicholson, news at 10, aboard the USS Hancock in the South China Sea.
Well, over the wall with you was soundman Hugh Thompson, and the cameraman was Peter Wilkinson.
Here they are.
Hugh, a very hairy moment there, I think.
Yes, it was survival that was in our minds, but not very much else was there.
Absolutely.
Really.
Well, Peter, of course, you kept filming, didn't you?
Just instinct, I guess. There were whole families grasping hands, desperately trying to climb over the wall, and the terrified look in their faces, you know, knowing that they wouldn't make it.
Thank you, Peter, and Hugh Thompson.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, memories of the evacuation of Saigon included the plight of the boat people. 10 years later, you returned to Saigon. You took with you a refugee who'd made a new life in Wales. Rather than risk the life of his toddler son on an overcrowded and drifting fishing boat, he left him behind with his grandmother. They'd not seen each other for 9 years until you reunited them.
Welcome to Vietnam, they said. And somewhere out there in the crowd, a boy was waiting.
Nó hay tin con về là nó nghỉ luôn, nó không có đi học nữa. Trời đất không nổi đâu.
They flew back to Wales together on St. David's Day, and they are here tonight. Nyip and his son Wang, renamed what else? David.
Great.
And his mother Anne and brother Peter.
Hey.
How are you? Hello, David. Good to see you. Michael Nicholson, this is your life.
For the best in entertainment, watch Des tonight.
We've got one of the world's most stunning and glamorous actresses with us tonight, Ursula Andress. And the Errol Flynn of comedy, Jim Davis, who's currently knocking them sideways at the London Palladium, Jason Donovan.
I close my eyes.
lift, Richard. He's here.
Could be there when you are.
And that's in half an hour from now here on Tyne-Tees. Well, Christmas preparations are well underway in Coronation Street, and Ken and Alma are hoping to jet away in search of winter sunshine. But will Mike Baldwin spoil their plans? Chances are.
I can feel your warm kiss ever close to my lips, and the scent of you invades the cool evening air.
Babycham, for true romantics.
Hero, the aftershave for men from Faberge.
This holiday season, join Fievel with the voices of Dom DeLuise.
Can't cut your tongue?
Amy Irving.
You can be whatever you want.
John Cleese.
It appears to be a young pioneer.
And Jimmy Stewart.
You want to intimidate someone, give them the lazy eye.
Steven Spielberg presents An American Tale. Fievel Goes West.
Well, what do you think, Jeeves?
Sir?
The Arctic Wonder, our new cooler whatnot.
May I inquire what you're proposing to do with it?
It's for the jolly old Croft original.
If I might caution you, sir.
A drop of the chilled Croft is absolute nectar. Everyone at Stiffy Bings do lap it up. The trouble with you, Jeeves, is that you're too stuck in your ways.
But not quite in the Ice Age, it was just.
Chilled Croft Original. One instinctively knows when something is right.
Right, Anne wanted to know why British gas is so expensive. Let's go right to the top. Hello there.
Robert is the chairman of British Gas.
The price of gas is very inexpensive. Your total bill, as I understand it, costs less than £1 a day.
Why have prices risen so much in the past 18 months?
From 1987 right through to today, British gas all the time is below the rate of inflation. British gas is amongst the cheapest in Europe.
Can you prove that?
Definitely.
I wonder what the Italian for gas spoon is.
Quanto costa del bolletto del gas?
Do you speak English?
Yes, just a little bit. Do you have a bill that we could look at?
The exchange rate is 2135.
But what's the cost per firm?
Oh, it's around 20% more expensive in Italy for gas. British gas isn't that expensive.
You really, really feel that?
Oh, I'm convinced.
British Gas.
I'm going to the bar, Al. Cover me.
Fraud Squad. Tonight's episode, The Bar of Fear.
What can I get you?
Screwdriver.
Anything to drink?
What's that?
Just cider.
This isn't just cider. Fraud Squad, hold it, sister. This is Red Rock. You see, it's less gassy with no strong aftertaste. It's a different kind of cider altogether.
It's less gassy with no strong aftertaste. It's a different kind of cider.
Booker, Al.
Are you available under 15?
Red Rock Cider. It's not red, and there's no rocks in it.
Tonight on ITV, the true story of a mountain man's exploits that made him a folk hero to some and a cold-blooded killer to others. He gunned down 2 game wardens claiming self-defense and eluded capture for months.
From what I understand, Dallas knows every cave and gopher hole in the Northwest. It's going to take time, but we'll get him.
His arrest led to a sensational trial and a startling verdict. Follow the manhunt for Claude Dallas tonight at 9 on ITV.
Now on Tyne-Tees, it's time for Coronation Street.
it does seem like a wonderful idea.
I'm sure it does. How are them extras?
Oh, well, he hasn't said yet. No, you know, the extra coming. I think what I might do, you know, when it gets a bit quiet, I might go down to Rosamond Travel and see what they've got.
They've got bus, remember?
Oh,
you can have one of their holidays by going to the airport and not coming back.